I sat at the white linen-covered table in Bellevue Manor, staring at the crystal wine glass in front of me while my family celebrated around me. It was Dad's 60th birthday, and everyone looked so happy. Everyone except me. My sister Courtney sat across from me, her boyfriend in his crisp military uniform beside her. She looked at me with those familiar eyes, the ones that had always carried judgment. "Can you even afford this place?" she asked, her voice dripping with contempt. The question hit harder than any punch I had ever taken in combat training. I never imagined that tonight, my carefully built walls would crumble in the most unexpected way. I tried to keep my face neutral, tried to remember all the training that had taught me to control my emotions under pressure. 5 years ago, I had vanished from my family's life without explanation. They thought I had failed at everything, that I was running from debt collectors and broken dreams. The truth was so different it hurt. I was General Azaria Morgan, leading classified operations that most people would never know existed. I had chosen to let my family believe the worst about me, rather than risk exposing secrets that protected millions of lives. Every medal I earned, every mission I completed, every life I saved, had to remain buried in classified files, while my own family thought I was worthless. "I can manage, Courtney," I said softly, hoping she would drop it. But my sister never knew when to stop. She turned to the man beside her, Commander Derek Hayes, with that bright smile she saved for impressing people. My sister dropped out of everything. She announced loud enough for nearby tables to hear. No job, no achievements, nothing. She gestured at me like I was an exhibit in a museum of failure. Derek, stationed at Fort Bragg overseeing special operations, nodded politely, but I could see the judgment forming in his eyes too. Mom chimed in next, her voice carrying that disappointed tone I had heard so many times in my mind during long nights overseas. "We gave you every opportunity, Azaria. You wasted them all." Patricia Morgan had always been a woman of high expectations, and in her eyes I had fallen short of every single one. Dad, Douglas, just looked down at his plate, saying nothing. My brother Trevor shifted uncomfortably but said nothing in my defense either. I was alone at a table full of my own blood. Courtney was really warming up now, enjoying her moment. "This is Commander Derek Hayes," she said proudly, "stationed at Fort Bragg. He oversees special operations." She squeezed his arm possessively. "He's being considered for promotion to colonel." The pride in her voice was unmistakable. She had always needed to prove she was better than me, even when we were kids fighting over toys and attention. Now she had found the ultimate prize, a successful military officer to parade in front of her failure of a sister. Derek smiled modestly, clearly used to being shown off. "Your sister here has no idea what real service means," Courtney added, laughing like it was a joke. But I could hear the knife edge underneath. Derek glanced at me with something between pity and disdain. I looked down at my untouched salmon, wishing I could just disappear the way I had 5 years ago. Then Courtney dropped her bomb. "Actually, Derek, I have a confession." Everyone at the table looked at her, waiting. The restaurant noise around us seemed to fade as she prepared her moment. "I found out some things about Azaria. I did a little background check." My stomach dropped. What was she about to say? She works in a rundown apartment, working odd jobs. She even tried to apply for military service 3 times and got rejected every single time. The lies rolled off her tongue so smoothly I almost believed them myself. Courtney looked at me with false sympathy. "I brought Derek here tonight to show everyone what a real military career looks like, not a failed wannabe." The shock on my parents' faces cut deeper than any enemy blade. "Azaria, is this true?" Mom whispered. "You tried to join the military and failed?" The shame in her voice was unbearable. Commander Hayes looked at me with that expression I had seen before, the look people give to those who claim service but never earned it. Stolen valor, they called it. One of the most disgusting things someone could do. I could have defended myself right then. I could have pulled out my secure phone and made one call that would change everything. But I thought about the oath I took, about the soldiers who died under my command, trusting me to keep secrets, about the ongoing operations that depended on my anonymity. I thought about the families of agents still in the field whose lives hung on operational security. My personal reputation meant nothing compared to that. "Believe what you want, Courtney," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the storm inside. Courtney was not done destroying me. In fact, she was just getting started. She turned to our parents with an expression of concerned determination. Mom, Dad, I think it's time we face reality. She paused for effect, making sure everyone was listening. We should cut ties with Azaria. She's bringing shame to our family. I watched my mother's face crumble. Patricia had always been proud of our family name, proud of the image we projected to society. The thought of having a daughter who was seen as a failure clearly pained her. But maybe Courtney is right, she said hesitantly. We have supported you for years, with nothing to show for it. Dad finally spoke up, but not in my defense. Your sister might have a point, Douglas said, avoiding my eyes. We have reputations to consider. His construction company had built half the buildings in our city. He was on charity boards, country club committees. Having a daughter who was perceived as a deadbeat did not fit his image. Trevor added his voice to the chorus. I have a reputation to maintain, too. My colleagues ask about my family. He worked as a financial advisor to wealthy clients who valued stability and success. A sister living in poverty reflecting badly on him was unacceptable. Courtney pressed her advantage. Derek works with high-ranking officials. Imagine if they found out his girlfriend's sister is a complete failure. She looked at Derek apologetically, as if my existence embarrassed her. Derek shifted uncomfortably but said nothing to stop her. Then came the words I never thought I would hear from my own mother. Azaria, maybe it's best if you leave now. Patricia's voice shook slightly. This is supposed to be a celebration. Your presence is making everyone uncomfortable. Douglas nodded in agreement. Yes, perhaps that would be best. The father who had taught me to ride a bike, who had bandaged my scraped knees, who had told me I could be anything I wanted, was asking me to leave his birthday dinner. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. The sound seemed impossibly loud in the suddenly quiet restaurant. I was about to gather my coat when Trevor stood up too, blocking my path. Wait, he said. You owe us an explanation first. His face was red with anger or shame. I could not tell which. What have you been doing for 5 years? Where have you been? Let me guess. Courtney interjected before I could respond. Nothing worth mentioning. A few people at nearby tables were now watching our family drama unfold. I could feel their eyes on me, judging, curious. The humiliation burned hotter than any desert sun I had stood under during deployments. In that moment, I let my mind drift back to where I had really been. 5 years ago, I had been promoted to general at 32 years old, the youngest in modern history. I commanded a special operations unit that handled terrorist threats most Americans would never hear about. I had led a raid that rescued 43 hostages from a compound in Syria, losing 2 of my own soldiers in the process. I still saw their faces every night. I had coordinated intelligence that prevented a major attack on U.S. soil, saving thousands of lives. I had been shot twice, once in the shoulder and once in the leg, earning a Purple Heart each time. I had medals in a locked safe that I could never show anyone. But none of that mattered because of operational security. My identity had to remain classified because the enemies I had made would stop at nothing to get revenge. If they knew who I was, they would target my family. So I had chosen to disappear, to let the people I loved most think the worst of me. It was the price of keeping them safe. Some nights I wondered if it was worth it. Tonight was one of those nights. When I stayed silent, Courtney saw it as confirmation of guilt. She turned to Derek with sudden determination. Derek, darling, I need a favor. Her voice took on a sweet, manipulative tone I knew too well. Can you have your security team escort my sister out? She's causing a disturbance. Derek looked uncomfortable for the first time. Courtney, that's not necessary. This is a family matter. He glanced around at the watching crowd, clearly not wanting to make a scene. But Courtney would not back down. No, I want everyone here to see that my family doesn't tolerate failures. She raised her voice deliberately, ensuring maximum audience. This woman tried to impersonate a military officer once. Derek, isn't that illegal? The accusation hung in the air like poison gas. Stolen valor was indeed a serious crime, and she was publicly accusing me of it. Derek's face went pale. What? Courtney? That's a serious accusation. Even he seemed to recognize she had gone too far. But Courtney was too far gone in her need to humiliate me completely. I'm sure of it, she insisted. I have witnesses. It was a complete lie, but she sold it with conviction. The entire restaurant had gone quiet now. Every eye was on me. I stood there, accused of one of the most shameful acts a person could commit regarding military service, unable to defend myself without compromising national security. The restaurant manager, a thin man in an expensive suit, hurried over. "Is there a problem here? Should I call the police?" His concern was genuine, but his presence made everything worse. "Yes, please," Courtney jumped in immediately. "This woman is a fraud." She pointed at me dramatically, playing to her audience. Derek tried to interject, but Courtney talked over him. "She needs to be reported." I felt the situation spiraling out of control. If the police came and ran my identification, it would trigger alerts in systems that reached all the way to the Pentagon. My classified status would be questioned. Active operations could be compromised. Agents in the field might be exposed. All because of my sister's need to prove she was better than me. While Courtney demanded that someone call the authorities, Commander Hayes did something unexpected. He stopped talking and really looked at me for the first time that evening. His eyes traveled from my face to my posture, the way I held myself even under attack. Military bearing was hard to fake and harder to hide. I saw the moment recognition sparked in his eyes. 3 years ago, he had been called to a classified briefing at the Pentagon. He had never told Courtney about it because it was above her clearance level. During that briefing, he had received orders from a general whose face he never clearly saw, only a shadowed figure on a video screen. But he remembered the voice, the commanding presence, the way that general carried authority like a weapon. And now, looking at me, something clicked in his memory. "Wait," he said suddenly, holding up a hand to stop Courtney's tirade. "Hold on." His voice carried enough command that even my sister paused. "Excuse me, miss," he said to me formally. "What's your full name?" I hesitated, knowing this could go very wrong very fast. "Azaria Morgan," I finally said. "Morgan," he repeated slowly, his eyes widening. "Morgan." I could see him putting pieces together, remembering classified briefings and redacted files. General A. Morgan was a legend in certain circles, but almost nobody knew what the A stood for or what the general looked like. The security around that identity was tighter than most foreign installations. "I think there's been a mistake here," Derek said carefully, his entire demeanor changing. Courtney tried to interrupt, but he raised his hand again. "Don't call the police yet," he told the manager. "Let me handle this." Then he turned to me with new respect in his eyes. "Ma'am, may I speak with you privately?" "That won't be necessary, Commander," I said quickly. "I'll leave now." I tried to move past him, but he stepped into my path, not aggressively, but firmly. "No, please, I insist." His voice had taken on a different quality, almost deferential. Courtney looked between us in confusion and growing anger. "Derek, what are you doing?" she demanded. "She's my sister. I know her better than you do." The possessiveness in her voice was clear. She had brought him here to show off, to use his status to diminish me. And now he was not following her script. "Actually," Derek said slowly, still staring at me, "I don't think you do." The words hung between us heavily. My family looked confused. The watching crowd sensed a shift in the dynamic, but could not understand what was happening. I needed to shut this down before it went further. "Commander Hayes, I really should go," I said firmly, using his rank deliberately to remind him of protocol and discretion. But Courtney, feeling control slipping away, made one final desperate play. "Fine," she shouted. "You want proof? I'll give you proof." She grabbed her phone with shaking hands and pulled up a social media archive. "Look at this." She thrust the screen toward Derek and anyone else who would look. On the screen were photos of me from 8 years ago, when I had first joined the military as a regular recruit. I was in basic training fatigues, looking young and uncertain, just another private trying to make it through. "She was just a regular recruit," Courtney announced triumphantly. "Dropped out after 2 years. Never made it past private first class." These photos never left the training base. The photos were real. I had been a private first class. But what Courtney did not know, what she could not know, was what happened after those photos were taken. The rapid promotions that came with exceptional performance, the selection for special operations, the missions that earned commendations, the leadership that resulted in my swift rise through ranks so quickly that it had to be classified for security reasons. Derek studied the photos carefully. I held my breath. He could see they were genuine, but he was also trained to see beyond the obvious. He looked from the young private in the photo to the woman standing before him now. The photos support what I'm saying, Courtney pressed. She's been lying to everyone. Probably lying to you too, Derek. See, Courtney said to our parents, her voice breaking slightly with emotion. I told you. She's a disappointment. She has always been a disappointment. The venom in her words shocked even me. This was not just about tonight. This was years of jealousy and competition coming to a head. Mom started crying quietly. How could you, Azaria? How could you bring this shame to us? Dad put his arm around her but said nothing. Trevor just stared at his phone, probably already thinking about how to distance himself from me on social media. The other restaurant patrons began whispering among themselves. I heard fragments of conversations. Terrible, one woman said. Stolen valor, a man muttered. She should be arrested. The judgment was swift and absolute. I was being convicted in the court of public opinion with no chance to defend myself. Commander Hayes looked at me with an expression I could not quite read. Ma'am, he said quietly, his military formality deliberate. Were you ever stationed at an undisclosed location in the Middle East between 2018 and 2020? The question was carefully phrased, specific enough to verify but vague enough not to reveal classified information. I met his eyes and saw understanding there. He suspected, maybe even knew. But if I confirmed it, I would be breaking my oath. If I denied it, I would be lying. If I stayed silent, I would be confirming everyone's worst assumptions. There was no winning move here. I can't answer that, Commander, I finally said. The words felt like admitting defeat. My refusal to answer was all Courtney needed. She saw it as vindication, as proof that she had been right all along about her worthless sister. Enough, she declared, standing up dramatically. Derek, if you won't do your duty, I will. She grabbed her phone again, this time dialing a number with shaking fingers. Yes, she said into the phone, her voice loud and clear. I need to report a case of stolen valor. At Bellevue Manor Restaurant. The words sent a chill down my spine. This was escalating beyond family drama into something that could have serious consequences for national security. Courtney, hang up that phone, Derek said sharply, dropping all pretense of politeness. His command voice finally emerged, the one he used with subordinates. But Courtney was too far gone, too committed to her path. The suspect is claiming to have military service she never completed, Courtney continued into the phone, turning away from Derek. She's impersonating an officer. At the same time, the restaurant manager was on his own phone, also calling the police about the disturbance we were causing. This has gone too far, Dad said weakly, but he made no move to stop Courtney. Mom was crying harder now, her carefully applied makeup running down her face. Our family is falling apart, she sobbed. Trevor, trying to be helpful in the worst possible way, had his phone out recording everything. This is going on my social media, he muttered. People need to know what kind of person she really is. The thought of my face being broadcast on the internet, tagged with accusations of stolen valor, being shared and commented on by thousands of strangers, made my blood run cold. Not for my reputation, but because enemy intelligence monitored social media. If they found me, they would come for me. And they would come for my family. Azaria stood in the center of chaos she had not created but could not stop. Police were being called. Videos were being recorded. Accusations were being made. And I could do nothing to defend myself without putting countless lives at risk. The weight of my oath felt heavier than ever. Then Derek's phone rang. The sharp, insistent tone cut through the restaurant noise. He looked at the screen, and his face went from red to white in an instant. He answered immediately, stepping away slightly. Yes, sir, he said crisply. Yes, I understand. Right away, sir. His posture had gone rigid, his voice stripped of everything but military precision. When he hung up, he looked at me with an expression of shock, mixed with what might have been fear. Who was that? Courtney demanded, frustrated that his attention was not on her. But Derek ignored her completely. He turned to the entire restaurant and spoke with undeniable authority. Everyone needs to be quiet, he commanded. Now. The single word carried such weight that conversation stopped mid-sentence. Even Courtney fell silent, confused by this sudden change. The man who had been her accessory, her prop in humiliating me, had become something else entirely. He was no longer her boyfriend. He was a soldier who had just received orders. The restaurant doors burst open with enough force to make several people jump. 3 men in dark suits entered, moving with the kind of purposeful coordination that spoke of military or federal training. They were followed by more men, at least 6 in total, who immediately began positioning themselves around the room. The lead man was tall, probably 6'3", with steel gray hair and the bearing of someone who had commanded thousands. "Excuse me, sirs," the restaurant manager tried to say. "This is a private establishment." But one look at the badge the lead man produced stopped him cold. The manager went pale and stepped back immediately. The man's eyes swept the restaurant with practiced efficiency, evaluating threats, exits, and the overall situation in seconds. When his gaze landed on me, he moved forward with clear purpose. Courtney gripped Derek's arm tightly. "Derek, who is that?" she whispered urgently. "That's Colonel Marcus Thompson," Derek said quietly, his voice tight with tension. "He's from the Pentagon, Special Operations Division." The implications of that presence were clearly dawning on him. Important people from the Pentagon did not show up at random restaurants for minor disputes. They showed up when something serious was happening. Something classified. Colonel Thompson walked directly to me, his shoes clicking precisely on the marble floor. Every eye in the restaurant followed him. When he reached me, he stopped, stood at rigid attention, and delivered a salute that would have passed the strictest inspection. "General Morgan," he said clearly, his voice carrying throughout the now silent restaurant. The effect was instantaneous and electric. Courtney's mouth fell open. Mom dropped her wine glass, red liquid spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. Dad grabbed the edge of the table as if he might fall. Trevor's phone slipped from his hands and clattered on the floor. Commander Derek Hayes straightened to attention so fast it looked painful. "Ma'am," Colonel Thompson continued, "I apologize for the interruption, but when Commander Hayes's location was flagged in our monitoring system, I had to come personally." He kept his eyes forward, maintaining military protocol even in this bizarre civilian setting. "Colonel Thompson," I said tiredly, "this wasn't necessary. I had wanted to keep my 2 worlds separate for 5 more years, maybe forever. But that wall had just been demolished in the most public way possible." "With all due respect, ma'am," Colonel Thompson replied, "it absolutely was." He turned to address the entire restaurant, his voice carrying natural command authority. "I need everyone here to understand something very clearly." He gestured toward me. "This woman is General Azaria Morgan, United States Army. She is one of the most decorated officers in modern military history." The words fell like bombs on the assembled crowd. Colonel Thompson was not done. "She commanded Operation Silent Shield, which prevented a major terrorist attack that would have killed thousands of Americans on U.S. soil. She personally led a rescue mission that saved 43 hostages from a terrorist compound in Syria. She has received the Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, and a Purple Heart after being wounded twice in combat. Her work is classified at the highest level because her identity must be protected from enemy forces who would stop at nothing to get revenge. She has been operating under deep cover for the past 5 years to protect national security and," he added with a pointed look at my family, "to protect her own family from being targeted by the dangerous people she fights against." The silence after his words was absolute. I could hear my own heartbeat, hear the quiet hum of the restaurant's air conditioning, hear someone's shocked breathing. Courtney was staring at me like I was a stranger, which in a way, I suppose I was. "No," she whispered. "No, that's impossible." She looked at Derek desperately, as if he might contradict what we had all just heard. Colonel Thompson turned his attention to her. "Who are you?" he asked, not rudely, but with the directness of someone who had no time for games. Courtney stammered. "I'm her sister." The words came out small and broken. "Then you should be ashamed of yourself," Colonel Thompson said flatly. The rebuke, delivered without anger but with absolute conviction, hit harder than any shout. Courtney flinched as if struck. Colonel Thompson's attention moved to Derek. "Commander Hayes, stand at attention." Derek snapped to position instantly, hands at his sides, chin up. "Do you recognize General Morgan now?" Colonel Thompson asked. "Yes, sir," Derek responded crisply. "I apologize for not recognizing her immediately, sir. I should have known." "You will address her as ma'am or general," Colonel Thompson instructed. Is that clear? Yes, sir. Derek pivoted smoothly to face me and saluted. General Morgan, I deeply apologize for any disrespect. The formal apology, delivered in front of everyone, should have felt like vindication. Instead, it just felt sad. Dad rose unsteadily to his feet, one hand still gripping the table for support. Azaria, he said, his voice cracking. Is this true? All of this? His face had gone gray, aged 10 years and 10 minutes. Yes, Dad, I said quietly. Every word is true. I watched understanding and horror cross his face in waves. Mom was crying openly now, no longer trying to maintain her composed society matron image. Oh my God, she gasped through tears. What have we done? What did we do to you? Trevor bent to retrieve his phone from the floor, moving like he was in a dream. I don't understand, he said numbly. You let us think you were nothing. You let us treat you like you were worthless. I didn't let you do anything, I replied gently. You chose how to treat me based on assumptions. I chose to protect classified information and your lives over my own reputation. There was no accusation in my voice, just statement of fact. But the words still made him flinch. Courtney had collapsed back into her chair, staring blankly at nothing. This can't be real, she kept repeating. This isn't real. But Derek was standing at attention, and Colonel Thompson was there with his team, and everyone in the restaurant was watching this impossible scene unfold. It was very real. Sweetheart, Dad said, stepping toward me carefully, as if afraid I might vanish again. Why didn't you tell us? The pain in his voice cut through my military armor more effectively than any weapon. I couldn't, I explained. It's classified at the highest level. I took an oath. People's lives depend on maintaining operational security. If the wrong people found out who I was, they would use you against me. They would hurt you to get to me. I had to let you think the worst so you would be safe. My voice remained steady, but my eyes were not. I felt tears threatening for the first time in years. But we said terrible things to you, Mom sobbed. We abandoned you. We told you to leave. We called you a failure and a shame to our family. The list of her regrets poured out between sobs. I know, Mom, I said simply. I know. Colonel Thompson cleared his throat, drawing attention back to the immediate situation. General Morgan, how would you like to handle this? He gestured vaguely at Courtney, at the restaurant, at the whole mess my cover being blown had created. I looked at my sister, who sat motionless in her chair, her face a mask of shock and growing horror as the full implications of what she had done began to sink in. Colonel, she didn't know, I said. She's my sister. She made assumptions and mistakes, but she didn't know the truth. General, with respect, Colonel Thompson replied firmly. She made false reports to authorities about a high-ranking military officer. She attempted to have you arrested on fabricated charges. She publicly accused you of stolen valor. These are serious matters with serious consequences. His tone made clear he thought I was being too lenient. Derek Hayes spoke up, his voice tight. Sir, if I may. He waited for Colonel Thompson's nod before continuing. I take full responsibility. I should have recognized General Morgan. I should have stopped this before it escalated. The guilt in his voice was palpable. Courtney finally looked up, tears streaming down her face. Derek, no, this is my fault. I did this. I lied. I wanted to hurt her. Her voice broke completely. I used our relationship to humiliate my own sister. Derek looked at Courtney with an expression mixing pity, disappointment, and something harder. Courtney, he said slowly, you lied to me about your sister. You manipulated me. You used my position and my uniform to attack someone who turned out to be one of the most respected officers in the military. He paused, clearly struggling with what he had to say next. I can't be with someone who would do that. We're done. The words landed like a physical blow. Courtney's face crumpled. Derek, please, she begged, reaching for him. But he stepped back, maintaining professional distance. I'm sorry, Courtney, but what you did tonight, the lies you told, the way you deliberately tried to destroy your own sister, he shook his head slowly. I can't overlook that. I won't. He turned back to me and saluted again. General, I apologize once more for my failure to recognize you and for being part of this situation. You didn't know, Commander, I said tiredly. It's all right. But even as I said it, I knew things were not all right at all. Colonel Thompson pulled out his phone, read something on the screen, and his expression hardened. Ma'am, he said quietly, stepping closer. Your security clearance being flagged triggered automatic monitoring. I'm afraid there's been a complication. The formal way he said complication made my blood run cold. What kind of complication? I asked, already shifting into operational mode. Approximately 40 minutes ago, someone in this restaurant live-streamed portions of tonight's events before we could block it. His words confirmed my worst fear. Your face was visible. Your name was mentioned. The video was online for 3 minutes and 17 seconds before we could take it down. 3 minutes was an eternity in the digital age. How bad is it? I demanded. The video had 47,000 views before removal. It was shared 863 times. Several foreign intelligence services monitor viral American military content. He did not need to finish the thought. I knew what it meant. That means my enemies know where I am, I said flatly. It was not a question. We have to assume so. Yes, ma'am. Colonel Thompson glanced at my family, which means everyone here is now a potential target. Trevor, who had been standing frozen, suddenly looked at his phone in horror. I posted it, he said in a strangled voice. Oh, God! I posted a video. I deleted it right after, but his hands were shaking violently. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. 3 minutes, Colonel Thompson confirmed coldly. Your video was up for 3 minutes before you deleted it. Plenty of time for it to be captured, copied, and analyzed. I felt my world tilting. We need to initiate Protocol 7 immediately, I told Colonel Thompson. He nodded and began speaking rapidly into his phone, using codes and terminology that meant nothing to the civilians around us, but spoke volumes to those who understood. What's happening? Mom asked fearfully. Azaria, what does this mean? It means the terrorists and enemy agents I've spent 5 years fighting, the ones who want me dead, now know exactly where to find me, I explained as calmly as I could. And they know who my family is. You're all in danger now. Danger, Dad repeated, the word not quite making sense to him. What kind of danger? Colonel Thompson finished his call and turned to us. General, we intercepted communications 30 minutes ago. There's a hit team in the city. We believe they were searching for you using various methods. Now they know exactly where you are. How long until they arrive? I asked, my mind already running tactical scenarios. Based on traffic patterns and their last known location, 10 to 15 minutes, maximum. Colonel Thompson's assessment was grim, but professional. That's not enough time to evacuate safely, I calculated aloud. They'll hit us on the road. We're more vulnerable in transit than we are here. I looked around the restaurant, mentally cataloging exits, cover positions, fields of fire. Commander Hayes stepped forward. General, I can help. My unit is on standby. They can be here in 20 minutes. He was already reaching for his phone. Call them, I ordered. Tell them to converge on this location, full tactical gear. Expect hostile contact. Derek moved away immediately, making the call with urgent efficiency. I turned to Colonel Thompson. Lock down the restaurant. No one in or out. We hold this position until reinforcements arrive. He began issuing orders to his team, who moved to secure doors and windows with practiced speed. The other diners, who had been watching this drama unfold like spectators at a play, suddenly realized they were now part of something dangerous. People began to panic. Are we in danger? A woman cried out. Someone call the police, a man shouted. I raised my voice, projecting command across the room. Everyone, please remain calm. You are safer inside this building than outside. We have professional security personnel and military backup en route. Follow instructions and stay away from windows. My authoritative tone cut through the rising panic, giving people something to focus on besides their fear. Colonel Thompson's men were already positioning themselves at strategic points, weapons drawn. The restaurant manager looked like he might faint. This is impossible, he kept muttering. This can't be happening. But it was happening. And it was happening because my cover had been blown in the most public way possible. I looked at my family, huddled together near our table. They looked terrified, confused, and completely out of their depth. Mom clung to Dad. Trevor stood protectively near them, and Courtney sat alone, crying silently, the full weight of what her jealousy and spite had unleashed finally crushing her. An agent pressed his ear, listening to communications, then called out urgently, Colonel, 3 vehicles approaching from the north. Black SUVs. heavily armed occupants. Colonel Thompson barked orders and his team moved with precision. They were professional, well-trained, but we were about to face killers who had spent years dreaming of revenge against me. "Positions, everyone," Colonel Thompson commanded. His men took cover behind pillars and overturned tables. Commander Hayes, finishing his call, drew his service weapon and moved to a window position. The transformation of the elegant restaurant into a defensive position happened in seconds. "Get all civilians to the back, away from windows," I ordered. The manager, finally snapping into action, began herding terrified diners toward the kitchen and storage areas. My family stood frozen until I looked directly at them. "Mom, Dad, Trevor, Courtney, you need to go with them. Now." "But what about you?" Mom cried, not moving. "Azaria, come with us, please." "This is what I do, Mom. I protect people." I pulled her into a quick embrace, feeling her shake against me. "I won't let anything happen to you. I promise." I looked at Courtney, who met my eyes for the first time since the revelation. "Take care of them," I told her. Courtney stood on shaking legs and took Mom's arm. "Please be careful," she whispered to me, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. For everything." I nodded once, accepting the apology even though this was not the time to process it. The family moved toward the back with the other civilians. Trevor looked back once, his face stricken with guilt, before disappearing through the kitchen doors. Colonel Thompson moved beside me. "What's our inventory?" I asked, falling into familiar command patterns. 6 agents with standard sidearms, no heavy weapons. We weren't expecting a firefight at a birthday dinner. There was dark humor in his tone. We both knew how bad our tactical position was. "General," Commander Hayes approached. "I'm armed as well, awaiting orders." The respect in his voice was absolute. He was placing himself under my command without hesitation. I moved to a window, staying back in shadows, and peered out through a gap in the curtains. 3 black SUVs were pulling up to the front of the restaurant. Men were exiting, maybe 12 in total, all carrying assault rifles. They moved with military precision. These were not common criminals. These were trained soldiers or ex-soldiers, probably mercenaries hired by the terrorist organizations I had spent years dismantling. 12 hostiles, I reported quietly. Professional level, automatic weapons. They know what they're doing. Colonel Thompson cursed under his breath. "We're outnumbered 2-1 and outgunned significantly. But we have tactical advantage," I countered. "They have to come to us. We control the interior. We know the layout. They don't." I turned to face the defenders. "Thompson, position your men at the north and east entrances. Covering fire only. Don't expose yourselves. Hayes, you take the west side. Watch for flanking attempts. I'll cover the south entrance. That's their most likely primary breach point." The men moved quickly to their assigned positions. I took a weapon from one of Thompson's agents, checked the magazine, racked the slide, and verified the safety. The familiar weight and mechanics were comforting. I had trained with firearms since I was barely out of my teens. A weapon in my hands felt natural, like an extension of my body. I positioned myself behind a marble pillar that provided good cover and a clear view of the south entrance. My heartbeat slowed. My breathing steadied. The chaotic emotions of the family confrontation faded away, replaced by cold tactical assessment. This was who I really was, not the humiliated sister or the disappointing daughter, but General Azaria Morgan, a warrior who had survived dozens of combat situations worse than this. A voice shouted from outside, amplified somehow. "Send out General Morgan. No one else needs to die tonight." The accent was Middle Eastern, educated, familiar. I knew that voice. It belonged to someone I had crossed paths with years ago, someone whose brother I had killed in a firefight in Damascus. "You know I can't do that," I called back. "And you know what will happen if you try to come in here." My voice was steady, almost conversational, but it carried clearly through the broken door. "Then everyone inside will die," the voice responded. "You've made too many enemies, General. Too much blood on your hands. Tonight, you pay." "You can try," I replied calmly. I had faced death enough times to not fear it. What I feared was failing to protect the people behind me. Silence fell for several seconds. Then I heard it, the distinct sound of a breaching charge being placed. "They're coming in hot," I warned my team. "Multiple entries. Hold your fire until they cross the threshold. Clear targets only. No wild shooting." The last thing we needed was to hit civilians with stray rounds. The explosion at the south door was smaller than I expected, shaped precisely to blow the lock without causing excessive damage. Professional work. The door slammed inward and 2 men rushed through, weapons up and scanning. I moved faster than thought, years of training and combat experience taking over. I stepped from cover, closed the distance, and struck the first attacker with a precise blow to the nerve cluster in his neck. He dropped instantly. The second one swung his weapon toward me, but I was already inside his guard. I grabbed his wrist, twisted hard, heard bone snap, and disarmed him in one fluid motion. He went down with my knee in his spine. Gunfire erupted from the other entrances as more attackers breached simultaneously. Thompson's team fired controlled bursts, forcing the attackers to take cover. Hayes took down 1 man cleanly with 2 shots. But there were too many. They kept coming, professional and determined. Fall back to secondary positions, I ordered through the chaos. Protect the civilians. We gave ground slowly, maintaining defensive coverage while retreating toward the kitchen area where the non-combatants were sheltering. I fired precisely, each shot counting, taking down attackers or forcing them behind cover. But we were being pushed back systematically. Then I heard it, the beautiful sound of rotor blades. Helicopters. Multiple birds incoming. Hayes's unit was arriving. Hope surged through me, but I kept it off my face. Hold them, I commanded. Just a little longer. The attackers heard the helicopters too, and recognized the sound of their window closing. They pushed harder, more recklessly. One got past our perimeter and charged toward the kitchen. I intercepted him, using his momentum against him to slam him into a wall hard enough to crack plaster. He slid down unconscious. Then the front of the restaurant exploded with activity as tactical teams stormed in from multiple directions. Hayes' Special Operations Unit, 20 elite soldiers in full combat gear, overwhelming the remaining attackers in seconds. The fight ended as abruptly as it began. Attackers were on the ground, zip-tied, or fleeing only to be caught by the perimeter teams outside. I lowered my weapon, checked for any remaining threats, and when satisfied we were secure, I ran toward the kitchen. "Mom! Dad!" I called out. "Courtney! Trevor! Are you all there? Are you okay?" The door burst open, and my mother practically fell into my arms, sobbing with relief. "You're alive!" she kept saying. "You're alive!" Dad wrapped his arms around both of us. Trevor joined the embrace. And finally Courtney, all of us standing in a circle, holding each other while around us, tactical teams secured the scene. "You saved us," Dad said, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved everyone here." He pulled back to look at my face. "Really look at me, maybe for the first time in years. I'm so proud of you, so incredibly proud." The words I had waited 5 years to hear. They should have felt triumphant, but instead they just felt sad and necessary and long overdue. Colonel Thompson approached after several minutes. "General, we need to relocate you. Your cover is completely compromised. There will be more attempts." He was right, of course. My old life was over. I would have to disappear again, this time forever. "I know," I replied. "Give me a few minutes with my family first." He nodded and withdrew to give us privacy. I turned to face them all, these people who had thought the worst of me and who now knew the truth. "What happens now?" Dad asked, though I suspected he already knew the answer. "I have to disappear again," I told them gently. "New identity, new location, complete break from my old life." I looked at each of them. "I can't tell you where I'm going. I can't contact you. It's the only way to keep you safe." "For how long?" Mom whispered, though she knew there might be no answer to that question. "I don't know," I admitted. "Months, years, maybe forever. It depends on the threats, until the people who want revenge are neutralized or forget about me." The reality of permanent separation was sinking in for all of us. Courtney stepped forward, her face blotchy from crying, but her eyes clear. "This is my fault," she said. "If I hadn't been so jealous, if I hadn't posted that video, none of this would have happened." Her voice was raw with regret. "Courtney," I began, but she cut me off. "No, let me finish. I've been terrible to you my whole life. I was jealous because you were always so brave and strong and I never felt like I measured up. So I tore you down to make myself feel bigger. I brought Derek tonight specifically to hurt you. I made up lies. I wanted everyone to see you as a failure because then I wouldn't feel like one. She was crying again, but her words were steady. I'm so sorry, Azaria, for everything, for tonight and for every cruel thing before tonight. I looked at my little sister, seeing past the jealousy and competition to the scared person underneath. Courtney, life isn't a competition between us. It never was. We're sisters. That should mean something more than just rivalry. I took her hands in mine. You're not a failure. You just never had to face the kind of challenges that forced me to become who I am. That doesn't make you less. It just makes you different. When you come back, she said, then corrected herself. If you come back, can we start over? Can we be real sisters? I promise, I told her, and I meant it. When this is over, we'll start fresh. No jealousy, no competition. Just family. Trevor spoke up, his voice heavy with guilt. I'll delete everything from my social media. Every trace of you. I'll make sure nothing about you exists online where I have control. It was a small gesture, but it mattered. Thank you, Trevor, I said sincerely. That helps more than you know. Dad cleared his throat. I failed you as a father. I should have trusted you. I should have known you were too strong to just give up on life. Instead, I believed the worst and turned my back on you when you couldn't defend yourself. Can you forgive me? Dad, you didn't fail me. You just didn't have all the information. I chose to keep it from you to protect you. That was my choice, not your failure. I hugged him tightly. I love you, Dad. That never changed, even when you couldn't see what I was doing. We're so proud of you, sweetheart, Mom said, touching my face like I might vanish. You've saved so many people. You've done so much good. Come back to us when you can. We'll be waiting. We'll always be waiting. Colonel Thompson returned. General, it's time. The firm but gentle tone told me there was no more delaying. I nodded and turned to my family one last time. I love you all, I said simply. Remember that, even when you can't hear from me, even when it feels like I'm gone. I love you, and I'm protecting you. That's what I do. It's who I am. I hugged each of them one final time. Mom clung longest, whispering prayers and blessings. Dad squeezed my shoulders with his strong hands. Trevor looked like he wanted to say something, but just nodded instead. Courtney hugged me and whispered, Be safe, sister. Come home. Then I walked out of the restaurant with Colonel Thompson and his team. Commander Hayes stood at attention as I passed and saluted sharply. Other soldiers lined up and did the same, showing respect to a general leaving under these circumstances. The cold night air hit my face as we emerged. Black vehicles were waiting, engines running. I got into one without looking back because looking back would have broken me. As we drove away through the dark streets, I watched the city lights blur past. People in those buildings were living normal lives, having normal problems, not knowing that people like me existed in the shadows protecting them. It was a lonely thought, but not a bitter one. This was what I had signed up for. This was my choice and my burden. People always ask what it means to serve, I thought to myself. They think it's about glory, about recognition, about medals in display cases and speeches at ceremonies. But it's not. Real service is about sacrifice. It's about choosing duty over comfort, mission over personal happiness, protection of others over your own reputation. It's about standing in the gap between civilians and the nightmares they'll never know about. It's about letting people think the worst of you so they can sleep safely at night. Tonight, my family learned who I really was, and I almost lost them because of it. But in the chaos and the fear and the tears, I realized something important. You can serve your country and still love your family. You can be strong and still show vulnerability. You can be a general who commands troops in combat and still be a daughter who needs her father's approval. These things don't contradict each other. They complete each other. The people who truly matter will understand when the truth finally comes out. And the ones who don't understand, who can't see past their own prejudices and assumptions, maybe they were never meant to be part of your story. Not everyone gets a happy ending where everyone understands and approves. Sometimes the happy ending is just knowing you did the right thing, even when it cost you everything. I am General Azaria Morgan, and tonight I made peace with all the parts of myself, the soldier and the sister, the warrior and the woman, the commander and the daughter. All of it together makes me who I am. And you know what? That's enough. It has to be enough because it's all I have. But it's also everything I need. The car drove on through the night, taking me toward whatever came next. Behind me was a family that finally knew the truth and loved me anyway. Ahead was uncertainty, danger, and duty. But I was ready for it. I had always been ready for it. That's what being a general means. Being ready for whatever comes, no matter the cost. So let me ask you something, and I really want you to think about this. Have you ever had to sacrifice something important to protect someone you love? Have you ever let people think the worst of you because telling the truth would put them in danger? Drop a comment below and share your story. I'd love to hear from you. And if this story moved you, if it made you think differently about the hidden sacrifices people make, do me a favor. Hit that like button. It really helps us reach more people with these stories. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because we share stories like this every week. Real human experiences that matter. And please share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Maybe someone in your life who serves, or who has family in the military, or who understands what it means to carry burdens no one else can see. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for taking the time to understand that sometimes the people who seem like failures are actually heroes in disguise, carrying weights you can't imagine. Stay strong out there. Remember that you never really know what someone is going through. Be kind. Be understanding. And if you're one of those people carrying a secret burden, protecting others at the cost of your own reputation, know that you're not alone. Your sacrifice matters even if no one knows about it. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. And remember, the strongest people aren't always the ones who get the credit. Sometimes they're the ones standing in the shadows, keeping everyone else safe. God bless and stay safe.